I'm Ethan Evans. I'm here as your host today. I have a special guest, Richard Hua, Rich. And Rich is a global technology specialist with AWS. We're doing something I've done once before here, which is I'm inviting in an Amazon speaker who would normally be presenting only internal to Amazon. And so we'll have an unusual mix of audience here today. We'll have people from within Amazon who aren't that used to Twitch watching on Twitch because it's a good way for us to broadcast to a wide audience and let them all see. And we'll have my usual Twitch audience. Rich is going to do a standard slide presentation for 45, 50 minutes. Neither Rich nor I are speaking officially on behalf of Amazon or Twitch. But Rich is going to talk about emotional resilience, which is a topic not specific to Amazon. And he's normally teaches on emotional intelligence. And he's recast his presentation to really talk about how to thrive in uniquely stressful times. With all that as too much preamble, Rich, you have 100 people watching you and growing by the second. This is your chance. Introduce yourself any further you want and amaze and wow us with your class.
Well, I really appreciate that. So thank you for that warm introduction, Ethan. It's a pleasure to be on your show today. My name is Rich Hua. I'm a global technology specialist for Amazon Web Services. That's, of course, the cloud provider that's under the auspices of Amazon. I have the good fortune of working with the fastest growing service in the history of Amazon Web Services, which is Aurora Database. So in addition to doing my day job, I also train people in emotional intelligence. In a previous life, I served for several decades as a counselor and an evangelist at a very large church. And there I developed a program to help people grow in their emotional intelligence skills. This came out of my own struggle to develop my own emotional intelligence, something that was a real weakness for much of my life. I had the good fortune of collaborating with my friend Meng Tan, who was also developing an EQ program at Google called Search Inside Yourself. And that eventually became the most popular course at Google and then spread to other companies around the world. So since that time of development and being able to train people, I've had the privilege of really presenting and coaching thousands of people in their emotional intelligence at Amazon, at other tech companies, and various nonprofit organizations. And I'm going to share some of that with you today. We're all facing really a time of unprecedented stress, anxiety, uncertainty. There's the pandemic, economic turmoil, global fears, lockdowns, and work from home, or maybe worse than that, not being able to work at all. And, at Amazon, we're being called to have empathy for our customers and for each other. And for everyone, we're really being called to have more empathy for our family, our friends, and also our communities. So in order to do that, we must first take care of ourselves. And today we're going to cover some important things that I hope will help you how to better manage stress, be more positive, boost your resilience, and also show more empathy. So before I dive in, I'd love to have a little poll on the chat, and that is to answer this question: how much do you agree with the statement, I am experiencing more stress lately than I have in a long time? So 1 is super strongly agree, all the way down to agree, to 3 being neutral, to disagree, or 5 being strongly disagree. So please put a 1 through 5. 1 means you really, really agree. 5 means you really disagree. How much do you agree with I'm experiencing more stress lately than I have in a long time?
So, Rich, the answers are starting to roll in. It's skewing slightly 1 or 2, but there's a lot of 4s and 5s. I've only seen one person in the middle. And so I'd say, it's a little hard for me to count it up, but it's the 2 ends of the spectrum. There's
Interesting.
a few, yeah. It is a little heavier on the strongly agree or agree, but there's a lot of people, honestly, including myself, who are finding that the work from home environment anyway is conducive for us.
Interesting. Excellent. Well, that's probably not atypical. There's a group of people that are finding it extremely more stressful, and others that are really enjoying the fact they get to work from home because there's no longer a commute. They don't have to be in the office. So, it can be varied. Well, I can tell you that I can relate to both of those. Sometimes I feel like everything's great. I can work from home. Other times I'm actually freaking out a bit. I personally have been experiencing more stress in different ways. Both my wife and I have aging parents with pre-existing conditions, so we worry about them. Economic uncertainty is certainly something that's causing stress, not being able to go out to our usual places, and just some of the physical isolation. I'd love to say that I've handled it really well all the time, but it's a mixed bag, right? I've gotten annoyed with my wife and kids at times. I've been frustrated with my parents when they're not as careful as I'd like them to be. Sometimes I get discouraged when I read the news, or disappointed that I can't do many of the things that I like to do. So I'm working every day to adjust to the new reality. It's now the 5th week for me working from home. And maybe you're doing something similar, trying to adjust. And I'm trying to be more emotionally honest and resilient. So I want to share some things with you that have helped me and maybe will help you too. And one note is that this is not some kind of system, but it's really a variety of techniques that can help you out. So choose the things that work for you, and I hope that they can make a difference. So a little bit of background. And that is, emotional resilience can be thought of as falling under the broader umbrella of emotional intelligence. EQ, or emotional intelligence, is an essential part of who we are. Along with IQ and personality, they determine how we think and act. And they're really distinct qualities. People may have a high IQ but a low EQ, and people of all different personality types can be either high or low. And the good news is that EQ is totally flexible. It can change. Because of neuroplasticity, we can develop those skills. I like to think of it in this way. This is from Talent Smart. They have a nice little chart here that really shows kind of the 4 dimensions of EQ. That'd be your self-awareness and self-management, and then your social awareness and your relationship management. So those 4 things together make up our emotional intelligence capabilities. And I love this quote from my friend Meng. The aim of developing emotional intelligence is to help you optimize yourself and function at an even higher level than what you're already capable of. And boy, if there's a time for optimization of our emotions, this is certainly a good time for that, as we're dealing with all the uncertainty that's going on. So one of the things that can happen when there's stress and anxiety and fear all over the world, if you're especially in that 1 or 2 range, something has been happening to a lot of people, and it's called emotional hijacking. Okay, and what does that look like? Well, it might look a bit like this. If you've looked in the mirror lately and you resemble this hamster, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I look at this and this is what I look like sometimes. Definitely stress, right? Working from home with maybe young, bored kids running around, your makeshift home office, or maybe you've lost your job or you fear losing your job. Perhaps you've read a really disturbing news article about COVID-19 or about how the whole world is running out of toilet paper. Not true, by the way. Or maybe you're, on a more serious note, worrying about your elderly or vulnerable loved ones, or even have someone get COVID-19. And in the midst of all that, maybe you've said something you regretted or done something that you look back at and ask, man, I don't know what came over me. Like, why did I do that? Toilet paper shopping spree, anyone? There's actually a physiological reason for that. And that reason is that when stimuli come into our body or our brain, they actually enter the spinal cord into the base of our brain, into the oldest part called what some call the lizard brain. It's part of our limbic system, or the amygdala. And those are structures associated with emotions and experiences that help detect a threat. So they send this giant alarm to the brain, and it tells you to either fight or the flight, run away, or maybe freeze. Right. And so this is the oldest part of our brain, and it's really useful when you see a saber-toothed tiger and you just need to react, no time to think. But what happens is it takes about 6 to 10 seconds to get to the pre-frontal cortex, which is where we actually think rationally, right? Executive function. We make judgments and we have good decisions. And so really, really useful if you're, on the savannas and you got to run away from, some tiger back, a million years ago. But not so great if you're talking to your boss and they make a comment you don't like, right? That's definitely not when you want your lizard brain to be talking. And so we have to train our prefrontal cortex to manage what's happening in the lizard brain. And that really can be developed. But like I said, it takes about 6 to 10 seconds. And you've probably heard the phrase, if you're angry, you should probably count to 10 so that you don't say something you regret. And there's actually a neurological reason for that. So what do we need to do? How do we avoid the emotional hijacking and maybe react in a way that is not very healthy for us or for the people around us? I love this phrase, and it's called buoyancy. Be buoyant. When you think of this bear or you look at this bear, what words would you use to describe, it? You can go ahead and put in the chat, when you look at him or look at him or her, What words kind of come to mind?
All right, chat's starting to cute, relaxed, sinking, not emotionally hijacked, fuzzy, waterlogged, chilly, chillin', chill, marshmallow, beautiful, +1, not
Okay,
emotionally hijacked, go with the flow,
nice.
relaxed, bored, and olive. Does he have a giant
Okay, love
olive?
those. I love the fact that chill came about many times. You guys all get it, right? He's chilling. He's having a great time. He's floating. And so buoyancy is the ability to float on top of the water. You know, sometimes that water is super calm and sometimes it's rough seas like it is right now. But being buoyant means that when the waves push you down, you actually float back up to the top, just like this bear does. Now, you probably know if you swim that when you thrash around in the water, what happens? You actually wind up sinking, right? So to be buoyant, we have to learn to deal with stress in a healthy way. Stress is what makes otherwise happy, compassionate, helpful people maybe into ogres. And so now we have some more than ever in terms of stress. So we have to deal with that. And so to be buoyant, there are two key things that I want to talk about. The first is positivity, and the second is grit. I think of positivity as the ability to float, learning how to float at the top of the water. And then grit means when the waves come crashing and push you down, you can actually get back to the top. So let's talk about positivity. One thing that's really important to understand is that we all tend to have a negativity bias. We tend to remember negative events better than positive ones, and we tend to think negative thoughts more than positive ones. And again, that's kind of an evolutionary capability to keep us alive, but it also can be something that can really dampen our mood in today's society where, it's not life or death all the time, especially at the office, right? So I'll give you an example of our negativity bias. Go ahead and imagine that you got this response after giving a talk, right? What part impacts you the most? I'll bet you it was the last part, but ran a bit long, right? If you're like me and like most people, even though there are 4 positive things and 1 kind of negative thing, we go, ran a bit long. What are they talking about, right? So the key is to neutralize and not suppress our negative thoughts, right? It means we deal with it, not ignore them. Well, how do we do that? Well, that means having a healthy positivity ratio. Some say it's 3-to-1, others say it's some different number, but really the point is it should be more positive than negative. And one thing I will say that's really important, positivity does not mean ignoring the negative feelings and pretending it's all good. Because, it's not all good. It's not being a Pollyanna. Negative emotions such as disappointment, sadness, grief, fear, anger are all appropriate and healthy responses, especially in this current situation. So I encourage you to give yourself permission to feel those emotions. But positivity means we should balance things so we don't get pulled into a negative vortex. Viktor Frankl, even while he was, in a concentration camp, he coined the term tragic optimism, meaning that even in the face of incredible tragedy, we can find meaning and dignity in life. And so you see there on the screen, positivity has a lot of benefits, right? It improves your immune response, lowers your risk of heart attack. A study from Boston University Medical School and Harvard actually found that optimistic people have longer lives. They have a 50% greater chance of living past 85 than pessimists. And they just in general have about 11 to 15% longer lifespan. I read that and I thought, wow. So you may be thinking right now, great. What if I'm not as positive as I want to be? Am I doomed to failure and maybe an early demise? So the answer is no. There's actually good news. You can train yourself to be more positive, and I'm going to share some things with you today that everyone can do. The first one there you see on the screen is practice savoring. So savoring is this idea of enjoying something, and Meng Tan in his book Joy on Demand talks about appreciating the thin slices of joy in life. It could be as simple as, I'm kind of thirsty. I'm going to drink some water, and that's what I'm going to do right now. And, it's not like, yay, that was awesome, but it's like, oh, that was nice. Or maybe the opposite, right? Consider ever had a really good meal, maybe at an expensive restaurant, but you're really distracted by something. Your mind was on something else and you didn't even realize you ate something delicious. Or maybe you had one of your kids or your spouse give you a hug while you were busy doing something else, answering some email furiously, and you didn't even register they gave you a hug until they walked away. So those are examples of us missing out on those thin slices of joy. But imagine if we intentionally noticed each of those things and appreciated them for a few seconds. That's savoring. And what Meng actually found through research is that the more we practice savoring, the more it becomes a habit. It's a mental exercise that literally trains your brain to experience more joy. And so it's kind of like that old adage, take some time and smell the roses. Well, if you practice smelling the roses, the more you do it, the more roses you'll actually find around you. The second thing that we can do to be more positive is what I call the 3x3. And essentially, it's writing down 3 things we're grateful for, 3 gratitudes a day for 3 weeks. Just taking out a journal or a piece of paper and just writing down 3 specific things that happened that day. You know, my wife told me something really nice. My coworker gave me a kudo for something, or I had the opportunity to help out a neighbor as they were really struggling to get something done. Maybe they were elderly. Like 3 things you're just grateful for. Did you know that therapists have actually found this to be more effective than even drugs for treating things like depression? Because it actually helps our brain be able to find more of the things in life that boost our mood. It's kind of like what I call mental targeting. One of the things I did a few months ago is I bought a new car, and is a Hyundai Genesis. I love Hyundais. And as I was researching it, and before I bought it, I decided to buy it, and I was looking for a good deal, but I was driving around the road and I saw Hyundai Genesis all over the place. Now, did everyone suddenly go out and buy that car? No, it was because it was in my mind. And so I was noticing it more. And the same thing happens with gratitude. If we take the time and write them down on a daily basis, we train our mind to notice the things that we can be grateful for more, and it actually boosts our mood and helps us be more positive. My son, who's now an adult, during his teen years, he grew up with kind of a melancholic nature, a little bit of a negative personality. But one day I was talking to him and I said, "What? You seem just more up, more happy, a better, more positive mood. What's changed?" And he said, "I've been actually writing down things I've been grateful for. I've been journaling every day about things that I'm grateful for, and it's actually really made a big difference." So I've seen in my own life and in my own family how this can really make a difference. For me, I definitely am grateful for things that happen on the job, people that I can help out, the fact that I have aging parents that live with us on my side so I can actually take care of them. And, the fact that I've been able to connect with so many colleagues on a more personal level than ever. Instead of just jumping all into business, we actually really take a little time to see how we're doing. It's actually been very, very nice. The third and final thing in positivity is really, really important, and it's self-compassion. One of the biggest things we have to realize right now is that things are really messy, right? Life is messy, job is messy, everything's messy. We're all having to adjust. For those who are working from home, there's no such thing as a personal versus professional life anymore. It's more like professional. And so, you know what? It's okay if your dogs are barking or your kids are running into the video during your meetings. We're all in the same boat, and we would give our colleagues and our customers and other people a break. And so we should give ourselves a break too. Martin Seligman, who's considered, sort of the father of positive psychology, found that framing things in a certain way helps us to be more positive. And I call it EST, right? Eastern Standard Time, but it actually stands for external, specific, and transitory. Meaning when tough things happen or negative things happen, don't look at them as personal, pervasive, and permanent, but realize that it's really EST. So for example, changing words like always and never to this time. Changing things like I'm an idiot to, hey, I made a mistake. Or changing it's all my fault to, hey, here is my responsibility. Right? So that's actually very important to help us be positive while also looking at things realistically. Right? Maybe you're on a work call, it doesn't go well, your kids run into the room and they cause a distraction, and you're not able to do what you need to do, and you snap at them or you say something mean. We need to give ourselves a break and realize, we're adjusting. Do better next time, figure out how to be maybe a little more organized. But even if that doesn't happen, just to realize, this is the situation and it's okay. And if I get interrupted, that's just life right now for everyone. And one thing that's actually pretty important too, is it's important to have a divider between work and personal life. For many, if you're like me, you're finding that those are bleeding into each other more than ever. And so we do need to tell ourselves, it's okay to stop work. It's okay not to get everything done. We just can't get to all of it. And so one of the things that, as you look at these 3 things, savoring, 3x3, self-compassion, is that we do need to practice these, right? The more experience we have, the easier it will be to do those things. So you're probably thinking right now, oh, great. I'm negative. I have an early demise. It's going to take me at least 3 weeks to actually be more positive. I don't know if I'm going to make it that long and not be all stressed out. Well, I have good news. And that is that there's something you can do right now that can actually help you be more positive. And that's what I call the mindful minute. One of the miracle sort of neurotransmitters that's been around for a little bit is called oxytocin. And when the bullets are flying, 100 things are pulling at you, one of the things we really need is more of that because it helps reduce our stress. And you see there on the screen, increases optimism, compassion, even repairs our heart cells. And so you produce oxytocin when you give someone a hug, not doing as many of those lately, obviously, when you take a walk out in nature, when you have a baby, when you have sex. Some of those are harder to do during the workday than others. So a simple way to produce more, though, is breathing, what I call the mindful minute. Many C-level people do this, executives, leaders, all the way to, really just everyone in the workforce who understands this. And it's basically just doing a little exercise. And I'd like to invite you to do it with me. Okay. If you do it with me, you'll actually understand what I'm talking about. If you don't, then you won't. So I want you to kind of come along with me and do what I call box breathing. I got it from actually a Navy SEAL who kind of coined this term, where he basically takes in a 4 count in, holds it for 4, lets it out for a 4 count, and then holds it out for a 4 count. And it's called box breathing. And like I said, the Navy SEALs actually use it during their most intense moments. So, hey, if it's good enough for them, it's probably going to work for us too. So go ahead and close your eyes. And we're going to do this for 1 minute. And just go ahead and just clear your mind a little bit and breathe in for a 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now do it on your own. Do your own counting. One key is to make sure your diaphragm moves when you do it. So it means you're really filling your lungs. So just kind of do it for a minute. And then I'd like to know how it feels. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and put in the chat. How did that feel? How do you feel after doing that for just 1 short minute? Love to hear.
A couple people have already commented while they were doing it. Someone said they feel relaxed already. It works like a charm. Sativa Sourdy said, I learned box breathing in basic training, and most people thought it was a joke, but it comes in handy almost every day. Wow. We have a Twitch staff dropping by saying hi. We have good, making me yawn. Great. I feel great. Calmer. That really helps! Exclamation point. I do this the whole day anyway. Calming. Love it. Anxiety reducing. I ran out of breath. Feels like a mini reset. Relaxed. Etc. I ran out of breath.
Awesome.
It actually stressed me
Wow,
out.
awesome.
So some people are struggling, I guess, with the 4 count. You might have to shorten it for them.
Yeah. So obviously, everyone has their own style. The key really is to fill your lungs. So you should feel your diaphragm moving. So one simple technique is put a hand on your chest and a hand sort of on your diaphragm. And when you breathe in, you should actually feel your chest fill and your diaphragm move. And so use whatever count makes sense for you. It could be 3, it could be 4. But one of the things is that when you actually take in those breaths, you're actually activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which decreases your heart rate and your blood pressure, and also downregulates the intensity of emotions such as anger or fear. That's why they teach it to the military. It also brings more oxygen to your brain, which is really interesting because we tend to be shallow breathers. Somebody said they breathe all day. Yes, we do. But we tend to be shallow breathers all day. Like, how often do we actually fill our lungs? And even though our brain is only 2% of our body mass, it uses 20% of our oxygen. And so just bringing more oxygen into the brain helps us think more clearly. So there's so many benefits to mindfulness breathing. You don't have to be sort of some religion or Eastern. It's really just a physiological way of helping ourselves regulate the intensity of emotions. There's some great apps like Headspace or Calm out there that can help you practice. And of course, one of my favorites, Alexa has a mindfulness skill that you can use on a daily basis. So that's my first resilience booster you can do right away. The second one you can do right away is what I call making the right choice. So let's watch this little video to make sure you understand what that means to make the right choice. Okay, for some reason that video is not playing. Sometimes that happens. Let's see if this works.
Because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B?
I don't know if you've seen that video, but the reality is it's actually not about making the right choice. It was a joke. It was about getting your daily dose of laughter. And I loved that video when I first saw it. Unfortunately, most of us probably did not get an option B. It was all option A. But all jokes aside, when you laugh, you boost your immune system. It produces endorphins, which of course makes us feel better. We get better perspective. We see stressors as challenges rather than threats. And it's a powerful way to connect with others. Did you know that kids laugh about 400 times a day, like that baby there in the picture, whereas adults laugh about 15? We just don't laugh enough. And so my booster is to get your daily dose of laughter. Watch with your friends, watch some comedies, watch some funny videos, babies, dogs, cats. I don't know if you know this, but cat videos have actually been scientifically proven to lower your anxiety and sadness. Indiana University actually did a study on that, believe it or not. One extra tip is don't read too much of the news. Reading too much news can make us feel negative because these days it's kind of a steady stream of negative stimuli. In fact, one psychologist coined the term headline stress disorder. So the fact is, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better in a lot of places. So it's good to limit the news and then balance it with some good news. There's a Good News Network. They've got some great stuff. John Krasinski from The Office is hosting episodes of Some Good News. A lot of things you can do out there to balance sort of all the negative news that's coming our way. So the second piece that I'm going to talk about is grit. Grit. How do we increase it? Angela Duckworth is a MacArthur Fellow and does a TED Talk, wrote a book about the number one determinant of success, and she calls it grit. And it's really the ability to work hard and stick to goals and also to focus on things and not get distracted. And there are a few ways to build grit. The first is to join a tribe or make some friends. Remember that social distancing does not mean emotional distancing. We need to focus on emotionally connecting more than ever. It's a great time to connect with community, a group of friends, a club. You may want to attend a virtual religious service at a church, a temple, or a mosque. Studies have shown that regular attendance lowers the risk of depression, death, and even divorce, believe it or not. For me, my friends have really made a big difference for me during this time and just talking about how things are going. And so one thing to note is that friendships should not only be in our personal life, but really should be at work too. I really deeply believe that because we spend a lot of time at work. And for many of us, we're spending more time working at home these days than we ever did when we had to go to the office. And friendships are an essential part of the satisfaction, enjoyment, and happiness that comes from the job. One study actually showed that having two really good friends at work was the equivalent to having an extra $100,000 a year in pay in terms of satisfaction. So don't ask me where they got that round number, 100,000, but that is actually some research that's out there. I'm so grateful for friends like Phil and Kwesi and Richard and Carlos and all of the emotional intelligence champions or volunteers who help spread this training all across Amazon, all over the world. They're my friends, and it's great to be able to be together, to do things together and to do some good, even at work. So my action item here that can really help you is to join a tribe at work. If one's not readily available, then start one. You just need one extra person. And a special call out, whether you're at Amazon or maybe at a different company, is to make an extra effort to include new employees who've joined in the past month or so. Several new employees have shared with me how extra challenging it's been because they don't get to socialize, they don't get to meet people in the office. And the pressure, the nervousness of working at a company, especially at Amazon, when you're first starting, you feel like there's a fire hydrant coming at you. So it's even harder without social contact. And if you're a manager, you can really make a difference for the people on your team who are new. Remember that it's not business as usual. It's actually business as unusual. And so really making sure we help people connect can make a big difference. The second tip about producing more grit is to rewrite the story with gratitude and generosity. Martin Seligman also did some research to help soldiers in the Army become tougher. And this is actually related to the 3 gratitudes a day, but it's a bit different because it's specifically for tough or painful situations, one that you would not naturally be grateful for. That's why it requires rewriting or reframing. And so rewriting with gratitude means asking ourselves a question such as, what can I be grateful for even in this challenging situation? What can I learn that could make me a better, stronger person or a parent or a spouse or even a friend? Generosity means, how can I be generous with others and give them the benefit of the doubt? I was talking with a friend of mine, Carlos, and he shared something really cool that helps him be grateful. You've all heard of FOMO, fear of missing out. Well, he came up with this idea of experiencing JOMO, the joy of missing out. And he said, you know what? I have plenty of JOMO these days. I'm missing out on the commute. I'm missing out on bad traffic in the Bay Area. I'm missing out on running around all weekend for my kids' sporting events and being super busy. And I'm missing out on all the pollution that's been in the world because it's cleaner. So he's really looking and going, there's some things that I'm missing out on, but it's actually good. And he shared about how his older son, who'd moved out a few years ago because, he got a job, moved back in for the shelter in place. And now they get to have dinner together every night, something he never thought he'd be able to do again consistently. And he gets some extra time with his son. So I thought, what a great way to look at things. And for generosity, it basically means giving people the benefit of the doubt and not assuming the worst. There's actually a concept in psychology called Hanlon's razor. And it goes like this: don't ascribe to malice what can be ascribed to ignorance or neglect. Because the fact is, when people hurt each other almost all the time, it's actually due to ignorance and neglect. How many people out there, when we hurt someone or do something offensive, like we meant to do it? Like most of the time we made a mistake, right? It's a rarity. And so it's the same for other people. When they hurt us or they do something, generally it's because they were ignorant or neglectful, not because they were malintended. And so one example is if somebody cuts you off on the freeway, you can get really angry and think, hey, they try to kill me. And go, hey, maybe they're on the way to the hospital because someone's sick. You don't really know why, but if we interpret it with generosity, it actually helps us psychologically. The final thing is living on purpose. Duckworth talks about the most powerful aspect of grit as living with purpose or meaning, and that is the intention to contribute to the well-being of others. And so you can get more grit by asking, how will what I'm doing benefit my loved ones, my colleagues, maybe even the world? That keeps it going when things are tough and you don't see results for a long time. Simon Sinek has a really popular TED Talk called Start With Why. And he shares about how for organizations and people, really the long-term success comes when you have a purpose, you have a why, and that always is more powerful than the how or the what. And so during this time, I encourage us to find a purpose, find some meaning. It could be helping out someone else. You might go above and beyond, maybe to support some customers who are doing some really important things right now, right? Healthcare, education, virtual delivery services, and of course, even gaming, right? That's keeping the world kind of occupied during this time. Or maybe it's internal at work, mentoring a colleague or helping your organization solve some problems. Or maybe it's very personal, helping someone in your neighborhood or community. For us, this came to reality even before the COVID-19 crisis. Our daughter was diagnosed with severe depression several years ago. And my wife and I really struggled with deep discouragement and fear and uncertainty as we worked to help her deal with it and find the right treatments for her. We also believe that something good could come from it and the experience that we'd gotten, because we saw so many other families struggling with the same challenges. We had the good fortune of going to the Mayo Clinic for 2 weeks for a very special program where both our daughter and us and we learned about cognitive behavioral therapy skills to really help her get better emotionally. And so it was so helpful to us. We came back and started a parent support group that has now helped dozens and dozens of families in the San Francisco Bay Area to also better be able to support their own kids. And so thankfully, our daughter's doing much better now that she's found the right medication, the right therapy. But that idea of having a purpose really helped us to persevere and have grit during maybe one of the most challenging and dark times of our lives. So it's come true for me. These three things can really make a difference in terms of grit. Now for some resilience boosters you can do kind of right away. The first one here is, you got to move it, right? It's from Madagascar, right? One of the biggest dangers of quarantine is the fact that we're sitting on our bottoms a lot. And, studies have found that it actually really causes more anxiety and depression, as well as more obesity and heart disease if we sit too much. So you're probably like, oh my gosh, right? You perhaps heard the idea that sitting is the new smoking. So if you're sitting 8, 9, 10 hours a day, you've got to make sure you get up and move, right? The recommendation is 60 to 75 minutes of standing and moving. And so you can basically do simple things like standing on a phone call, standing while watching TV. I have a standing desk, so I wind up standing half my day. Go outdoors, really important to get some vitamin D also, as well as a walk around, in uncrowded places, obviously. You can work out with your friends with Peloton, 90-day free, trial for the app. And one tip is to just put movement into your schedule. You might get so intense doing your work that you forget. So if you just kind of put movement breaks in there, it actually really helps me to remind myself that I should be moving around. So those are all really, really great ways to be able to increase our ability. And if you're part of Amazon, my fellow Amazonian and friend, Jamie Nolan, put together what's called the Shelter in Place Wellness Challenge. So you can find that on the wiki and go ahead and join in. And it's all these people coming up with their goals and keeping each other, sort of like jazzed up to kind of meet those goals from a movement point of view. My next resilience booster is to find some healthy distractions. It's important to get our mind off the fearful state of things. And we can do so many things like read a book, take some online courses, pick up a new hobby like gardening or cooking. Both have been found to be very therapeutic. We can watch a virtual concert. A lot of great artists are doing it now for free for people, which is really amazing for them to do that. You can take a virtual tour of a lot of places around the world online. And then one cool idea is to take an imaginary vacation with your family. And your family could be actually in different parts of the world. Just get on a video conference call. Studies have shown that you get enjoyment out of looking forward to a vacation and also looking back at a positive experience. So you could plan your next vacation, or you could go and get out some of those 50,000 photos you've taken and never gone back to look at and re-experience them together with your friends. I actually just did this with my sister in Chicago, my parents who live with us, and my son in San Francisco. We all did this together, and I had a great time looking back at some of our vacation. So another sort of question for the poll. I'll go ahead and put in the chat. What one quality denotes a high emotional intelligence more than any other and separates great leaders from average ones? I'd love to get your opinions on that.
Feel free to just put in your opinion. There's no right answer here.
Correct. What do you think denotes the highest emotional intelligence?
The first four answers were all empathy.
Very popular answer.
Let's see. Self-awareness, 5 more consecutive empathies, positivity, emotional self-awareness, awareness, compassion, restraint.
Excellent. Those are all excellent. And I think you all get the idea, right? Those are all absolutely key. Now, I'll tell you, the one that Daniel Goleman says, in his opinion, is the highest form, somebody mentioned it, is compassion. And it actually is very, very close to empathy because, my colleague Meng defines compassion as I understand you, which is empathy, and I want to help you, which is the action part. So compassion means, yes, I understand how you're feeling, but I'm also wanting to do something about it. And, at Amazon, one of the things that we try to do is be a really customer obsessed company. In fact, our mission is to be the world's most customer, obsessed or customer centric company. But, when we think about our families, our loved ones, anybody that we care about, even our community, it's compassion that really is sort of what we need these days. And we need it maybe more than ever. And one thing that's important to understand is that when we have compassion, it means we have a high EQ, But believe it or not, it not only helps other people, but it helps us as well. So my last resilience booster to help our own resilience is to volunteer and serve others. And I know what some of you are thinking. You might be thinking, what kind of resilience booster is that? Well, there's actually science behind it. Kelly McGonigal has a TED Talk, and she cites research from the University of Buffalo in New York that found that people who had been through a major stressful experience had a lower lifespan. Okay, not surprising. But among those participants, there's a group of people who are not affected by trauma and actually showed no decrease in lifespan at all. And they dug deeper to find out what was different about this group. And it turns out that they were all engaged in helping friends, neighbors, and community in some way. They were showing compassion. And the fact is, showing compassion and serving others not only nourishes other people, but it also nourishes our own health. And so you see the quote there from Kelly: how you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. So there's so many ways to show compassion during this time. You see them there on the screen. You can run errands for the elderly, ask them what they need. I was reading a David Brooks article, and it really broke my heart. He got a letter from somebody in the world who said, I'm an elderly person and my neighborhood is not very friendly, and no one has asked me if I needed anything. No one has offered to help at all, and I'm really, really struggling to take care of myself. It just broke my heart, because I thought, how many people around us, we think maybe somebody else is going to take care of them, but we haven't asked. We can take that effort and try to make a difference in our community, and who knows who might be able to help. Food banks are in desperate need right now of healthy volunteers. You can reach out to old friends. It can really make a big difference during this time, especially if they're isolated or vulnerable or living by themselves. Maybe they're in a challenging living situation. Maybe they've lost their job. Maybe it's a coworker that lives by themselves, and they could just use some extra connections. David Brooks writes about the fact that this is a great time for aggressive friendship. And he says, reaching out to those who are lonely or troubled. One of my colleagues, Evgeny, basically does on a regular basis these random acts of connection. He'll just basically ping somebody and say, hey, you want to just chat for 10 minutes? Totally out of the blue. And most people say yes. And he just basically just call him to say, hi, how's it going? And these are coworkers that maybe he hasn't connected with in a while. So I thought that was a great idea. You can do virtual volunteering, the United Nations, the Red Cross, the Smithsonian, volunteermatch.org has an extensive list. You can, and this is one of my favorite ones, you can help somebody get a job at Amazon maybe. We're hiring 100,000 people around the world, in our fulfillment centers. We're paying people $2 more in the United States than we normally do. So there's a lot of ways that we can actually make a difference. My heart is warmed so much when I see people on Nextdoor doing so many incredible things, creating pantries in front of their houses, volunteering to help out, doing all these things to encourage each other during this time that we're at home. It's really a time that, every little thing can really make a huge difference. And when I reflect on what's happening in the world right now, I think of this quote from John F. Kennedy, where he said years ago, in the Chinese language, the word crisis is composed of two characters, one representing danger and the other opportunity. We certainly have a crisis right now, no doubt about it. There's danger all around us, but there's also much opportunity to show compassion to our fellow humans, in a way that maybe we haven't before. These days, how are you doing is not just a superficial greeting or a substitute for hi. We can actually ask the question and really mean it, like actually wait for a response, right? And the other person will genuinely appreciate it. It also reminded me of this ancient proverb: two people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. So we can reach out and help each other and succeed and thrive during this time, really in so many ways. So as I sort of conclude what I talk about today, where do we go from here, right? I know we can get maybe excited or inspired after a session like this, but to make a real change, we do have to continue to work at it ourselves. And so here are some suggestions. And the first is to commit to practicing one of these EQ techniques every day for 30 days. It takes about 4 weeks to form a habit. So if you do one of these things every day for about a month, it will really make a difference. The next is perhaps the most important one. And one of the most impacting things we can do is regularly connect with each other. Within Amazon, we have this idea of 2 pizza teams. And so I kind of took that and modified into 2 pizza tribes, right? And that's basically finding a group of friends, about 5 or 6 or 7, and meeting up with each other every week. Sort of these virtual tribes, right? To say, hey, let's get together and let's support each other. It's probably not going to look like this picture, though. It's probably going to look a little more like this. But hey, you can socialize, support each other, do some resiliency exercises. Imagine how powerful it would be if you spent 5 to 10 minutes doing a breathing exercise together. You'd feel more calm, you'd feel more relaxed, or sharing what you're grateful for. It would elevate your mood. And then, drinking some martinis together or something. It might feel a little weird at first, but I guarantee you, you will become more resilient as a result. Within Amazon, I have this team of amazing volunteers, our EQ champions, and they'll be holding emotional intelligence gatherings on our internal tool, Amazon Gather, and anyone's welcome to attend, to be able to do some socializing, but also to do some exercises together. And, I really want to encourage you, whether you're at Amazon or another company, again, to reach out to the people you think might be more vulnerable, might be more isolated, those who are brand new. And, I want to do a special call out and thank Bill Dwayne for this idea of sort of the 2 pizza tribes. He was formerly director of well-being at Google, and, he helped scale that idea of emotional intelligence there by unleashing self-organizing groups that ultimately help to really impact thousands and thousands of people there. My final tip, if you're at Amazon, is to join the EQ mailing list. We'll be sending out weekly multiple emails to give you ideas and tips on how to improve your resilience and your emotional intelligence. And also check out the internal wiki. It's got a lot of great resources. And if you're outside Amazon, you don't have access to it, go ahead and link in with me. I'm happy to share more things with you. There's so many people generously doing trainings now for more resilience. Goldman EI has a resilience training. Yale is making free their most popular course ever, which is on developing your well-being. LinkedIn and Coursera have some great courses on emotional resilience. And a lot of people are offering these for free or a free trial during this time to help people. One of the things that you can do also is sort of a final thought is read some books. These are some of the books that I've read, have all been quite excellent. Lou Holt said many years ago in a speech to Ford Motor Company, the 2 things that will impact you the most are the people you know and the books you read. And so if you meet some of the right people in those tribes and you read some of these great books, I think it can make a huge, huge difference for you. So I really want to tell you, I hope you thrive. You can be an emotionally resilient person and thrive during this time. You've probably heard of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's trauma due to negative effects, right? But psychologists in the 90s actually found that there's a totally different kind of response called post-traumatic growth. Growth is possible if you respond properly to trauma. And I talked a lot about some of those healthy responses today. People have developed newfound purpose, deeper relationships, greater appreciation for things after a stressful experience. And so it's totally possible to thrive and not just survive. It is within your control. So I sincerely hope that what I talked about today really will help you to thrive. So we can take some question and answer at this time. I'll rely on Ethan to kind of give me some of the ones that seem to make the most sense and that we can chat about.
Yep. Rich, we'll do Q&A. Why don't you go ahead and drop out of slide view so I can make you big on the screen? Look at that. Bang. He is perfectly fitted to our discussion with a guest. A lot of people have thanked you for what you've presented, and I will as well. The number one question you may have already answered, and I will admit I put it in and then other people voted for it, but I think you got to it, which is what is the simplest thing I can do today to apply these concepts and see a quick benefit?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give the Uber sort of answer, and that is whatever makes the most sense for you. The thing that's going to give you the most benefit is something that you actually find easy to do and that you can repeat and do simply. I will say that probably one of the most popular ones is just the mindful minute. We only did it for 1 minute, but imagine doing it for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. I do that before every sort of thing that I get a little nervous about or maybe a little anxious about. So just doing some breathing can really make a huge difference. The other thing I will actually add to that is if you want some confidence boosters, the power pose is actually really great. And that's Amy Cuddy does this great TED talk about the power pose. And she found that when you stand up and you put your arms on your hips or you make yourself really big, it actually helps you feel more confident. So
Totally.
when I'm on kind of a call that I'm a little, really important or highly critical, I'll raise my standing desk. I'll do a power pose. I'll do some deep breathing, and then I'll jump into the call. So those two things together, actually, you can do anytime, anywhere, and can make a big difference.
Excellent. Thank you, Rich. But the next question is, what are good ways to process negative emotions? So if you are struggling with a negative emotion, what do you do?
Yeah. So there's so much that can be said about this, but I'll tell you the thing. I'll first admit it's a weakness of mine. I don't like negative emotions. Even the term negative means it's negative. So I tend to avoid those. And I think growing up for me, I tended to basically just shove them to the side and ignore them. And I think most people do that, who maybe come from that I don't want to deal with it mindset. I studied engineering. I was an immigrant. I came to the United States when I was 3.5 years old. I wasn't really taught how to process those things. So I ignored them. But I found that was actually pretty unhealthy because they would just come up at random weird times because I wasn't dealing with them. So I think the important thing that I've learned with negative emotions is let yourself feel them. It's grief, it's sadness, it's anxiety. It's okay to go, okay, I'm feeling that. One powerful thing to do too is to label it, meaning I'm experiencing anxiety. I'm experiencing grief, admitting that it's actually happening. But when you label it, it actually engages your prefrontal cortex, so it doesn't take you over as much. So you're not just viscerally feeling it, but you're actually able to go, okay, this is what's happening. And if you need to sit in it for a while, that's okay. There's a very, very appropriate reason to feel grief and feel sadness and feel anxiety. But then you have to also regulate the thoughts in your mind so that it doesn't take over. Once you feel it, you label it, then you go, okay, now what are some things that can help me not stay in this negative state? And asking ourselves questions like, okay, I have these feelings and I have these thoughts. Are they true? What's a counterbalance to it? One technique that I like is maybe I have a thought, wow, this really, really bad thing could happen and it causes me to have fear. I could go, well, what's the opposite? What's a really, really good thing that could happen that could actually be a great result? And just to kind of balance that out. The foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy is the idea that our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions. So if we can actually deal with our thoughts and kind of, consider them in a healthy way, that'll actually have our feelings as well. One other thing I will say is something that is actually happening quite a lot these days is what CBT calls is a cognitive distortion. And the most popular one these days is catastrophization. Catastrophization basically means the sky is falling, the absolute worst will happen. And we've definitely been feeling a lot of that. I don't know about you. When I found out that there's a shortage of toilet paper, I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to run out. How do I go get some? Right. I mean, it's just this. I mean, logically, it doesn't make any sense, but we can catastrophize. And so it's important to even go, I am catastrophizing right now. What are the facts? Are those actually true? What are some things that may counteract the thoughts that I'm having and help me to kind of have a healthier emotion about it?
Awesome. Thank you. I want to call out, there is a Harvard, someone in chat will correct me, a psychologist or psychiatrist who gives counsel on managing negative emotions and a number of other topics, Dr. Alok Kanagia. Dr. K streams as healthygamer_GG, and he's amazing. In terms of someone you can watch for this full time, I think Rich has given a more structured presentation on this one piece. But if you want to talk about managing negative emotions, I've gone on Dr. K's show a couple times. One day I'll see if I can return there. But he's just so helpful. So, yeah,
Awesome.
and it isn't medical advice. And I didn't say it was. Chat's correcting me to make sure. He's not giving medical advice, but he gives great counsel. So with that, here's a little bit of a deeper question, Rich, which is, what are the best ways to learn to use your prefrontal cortex more than your amygdala? So I think it's a question of maybe how do we get out of that lizard brain?
Yeah. So all the techniques that I actually shared today will help you with that. It takes some time and practice. But the fact is, physiologically, we are wired. Everything will hit our lizard brain first. And as I mentioned earlier, it does take about 6 to 10 seconds to get to the prefrontal cortex, sort of in general. And so it's important to kind of, in a sense, intercept that feeling by engaging it earlier using some of these techniques. Labeling is one of them. If you feel really angry, just saying, I am experiencing a lot of anger right now, and telling yourself that. You don't have to say that out loud, but telling yourself that actually immediately engages your executive function. There's actually a little pro tip that I've used. It's talking to yourself in the third person has actually been found to be quite effective if you're feeling something really strong. So let's say you're really angry. You basically say, Rich, you are feeling extremely angry right now. Why don't you take a few deep breaths, wait about 10 seconds, and don't say anything, because you will regret whatever comes out of your mouth, right? So talking to myself actually engages that and makes me kind of think, so it's not just visceral. So that's kind of one of those techniques. The other is really pretty simple. It's actually just count to 10. It's sort of got it from your grandma, but if you just feel like I'm really feeling something very strong and you don't want to react in an unhealthy manner, just count to 10, take some deep breaths. That by itself can actually make a huge difference. Now, people, if you're in the conversation, they may be wondering, what the heck is this person doing? You can just let them know, I just need a moment. Just get yourself together. And that in itself actually can make a difference. I guarantee you, if you're really angry, or you're really afraid, and you're kind of in a situation where you're not running from, like an animal or something, but you're among humans, just doing that one simple thing can definitely improve the results.
Okay. Thank you, Rich. The next question's a little bit dicey, but I have a reputation on channel for dicey questions.
Okay.
We'll just point out that neither Rich nor I are in any way medical experts.
That's correct.
And so the question is, would you give different advice, and we'll be sure to call it advice, to someone struggling with depression? Is there anything that if you're depressed, and maybe here we'll take that as meaning sort of the feeling of depression, because we're not qualified to talk about someone who has a clinical condition. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling pretty low, would you give different advice?
Actually, I would not give different advice in the sense of, I think all these things help people, whether they're feeling, happy or stressed or have a feeling of depression. Obviously, again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I will say I have experience with depression because of my daughter, and I've received a lot of medical advice from doctors. And I think one thing that's actually really important is, if you think you are suffering from just the mood of depression or even something clinical, please seek professional help. Don't wait. A lot of people are offering telemedicine these days, and they've really ramped up the offering of that. So finding a professional, a therapist, a psychiatrist is really, really important. And you know what? What's the worst thing? You don't actually have clinical depression, but you got some help. There's no negative to actually seeking professional help. And so that's something that I would say is actually pretty important. These days, because of what's happening around the world and the extra amount of stress and anxiety, it's more important than ever to make sure we're doing everything we can to take care of our mental health. Hopefully if you work for a company that, does offer benefits, and they can, definitely cover that. Obviously, almost every company out there will cover those kinds of things. So take advantage of that. I think it's really, really important. Yeah.
Okay. So we have one last question. It's clearly from an internal Amazon person, but I can generalize it to anyone. The question was, how would you recommend implementing mindfulness in the FC or fulfillment center space? And the person says they're in Seattle 8, or I guess it's St. Louis 8, STL 8, whatever airport STL is. But really the question would be, I think, about implementing mindfulness in a warehouse or factory setting, in a workshop floor.
Yeah. Great, excellent question. So there are actually many different kinds of mindfulness. The one we did was just sort of a super focus, close your eyes, do the deep breathing. But there's actually many different kinds of mindfulness. Mindfulness really just means being in the present, paying attention. We choose the breath because it's a really simple thing that everyone does all the time that you can focus on. But you can also do body scans. That's a pretty popular thing. You basically just kind of notice, how's my head, how's my torso, how's my stomach, how's my thighs, how's my calves, how's my feet. You just kind of do a body scan just to notice your mind or your body. You can actually even pick certain things around you and just to notice, what's happening there, what's that over there. There's all kinds of different kinds. Some people do like a walking meditation. So really it's just being in the present, regulating your breathing, taking some deep breaths. And you can do that even while you're working if you kind of have to focus, but you just kind of make sure you're breathing in a nice, relaxed and, sort of attentive way. And then certainly during a break, right? I think when you get a break, it's a great time to be able to just go, hey, let me just take a few minutes and do some of this. It can actually make a difference. So I did want to call that out. What we did today was just one version of it, but there's actually a lot of different ones you can do even while you're doing activity. And that does help. And one other thing I will say about mindfulness, besides the parasympathetic nervous system, all that stuff, is we as people in today's age tend to think way too much about the future. And we get anxious about it. Dan Gilbert writes a really interesting book called Stumbling into Happiness. And he talks about how we're like super bad at actually predicting what will make us happy, because we think, well, this will make me happy, so I'm going to get ready for 10 years from now. But we're a completely different person 10 years from now. And whatever we thought today would make us happy doesn't make us happy when we get it. And so it's kind of this weird conundrum. And so the whole point is mindfulness also helps us just be in the present and just focus on what we're doing right now, what's happening right now. And that actually does help our sort of mental state also. I'll quote the great philosopher from Kung Fu Panda, where they said, the past is history, the future is a mystery, but today that is the present. Wait. I totally messed it up. The past is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but we have today to cherish, and that's what they call it, the present. Right. That was nice. A total paraphrase. Go back and watch the movie to kind of get the actual thing, but that's actually what mindfulness is a lot about also.
Yeah, the chat's always got your back. They immediately got today as a gift, so they were right there to fill in the blanks. Today is a gift.
Thank you very much. Today is a gift. That's why it's called the present.
So, couple things. First, I will share with folks. I actually use walking meditation. If you don't know what it is, at least the way I was taught, that's simple, is just you pick a short mantra or a short set of words, and every time one of your feet hits the pavement, you can repeat that word to yourself. I was finding that I was walking into work when, pre-stay home, pre-shelter in place. I was walking from the train to the office, and I was thinking about all the problems of the day, and I was getting into work in a bad mood. And then at the end of the day, I was walking back to the train and thinking of all the struggles, and I was again getting in a bad mood. And I changed my approach. Whenever I find that happening, I stop what I'm thinking about, and I think about how lucky I am. And I've used the mantra, I am so blessed. And those 4 words, I am so blessed, I am so blessed, a couple blocks of that, and it's hard not to feel better. And I noticed the strangest thing about it, which is I start looking up. I'm usually looking down at my feet, but when I start repeating that, I look up and I tend to see the sky more. And I've thought that's really interesting, that once I start thinking about being blessed as opposed to problems, my whole posture automatically changes. So
that is awesome. I love that story. And that's a great example of the past and the future, right? We tend to ruminate on those and we miss what we could actually be enjoying, right there in the present.
Yeah. I also have to compliment you, Rich. I value my ability as a public speaker. your history, I think you said as an evangelist, completely shows, because you're able to just go through an hour presentation right on your speaking points, and really well done. So I appreciate good public speaking, and you've really exemplified that here today.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
And someone in chat says your background looks like a green screen. It's so perfect. So here's the funny thing. It is, in fact, a green screen, but it's a green screen of his own living room. So it is both. He couldn't stream from his living room, so he took a picture of his living room and then put it behind his desk. So, Rich, go ahead and turn off your background for just a second.
I will. I also want to thank my beautiful daughter, who, like I said, is doing a lot better these days. She actually colored in my wall, because my wall is actually normally white. And I thought I don't look as good in front of white, so she colored it in gray. So it's all real except for the color of the wall. And instead of painting it, I decided that. But okay, so here's for the world to see the real.
And it's paper. He's got green paper behind him, which I love so much.
That I got from my friend. He had some extra green paper, and he said, "Hey, Rich, you want it?" And here it is. So.
Yeah, the mystery, it does turn out that when you pull up your bottle in front of it, your bottle vanishes.
Correct, yes.
But that's fantastic. I would say if you ever want to be a Twitch streamer, you clearly have the right tools and talents for that. Between your speaking and having a good streaming setup, there's a whole world waiting out here for you. So...
Thank you, Evan. I consider that a high standard and high praise. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm going to let you go back to work, and the same for all of our viewers, both in Amazon and out. We always love when you come here and join us and we're able to share something like this. And I hope you come back on Friday and next Tuesday. But either way, I hope you've gotten a lot out of Rich. And really appreciate all of you. For us, it's back to work. And so with that, Rich, I'll bid you farewell. I'm sure we'll catch up on Chime or otherwise. Chat has given you a lot of thanks. They're asking when we're doing the Amazon $5 gift card giveaway. Not yet.
Oh my gosh.
But maybe someday. So anyway, thank you all. Rich, I'll go ahead and let you, take off. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. All right. And for everybody else, that was fantastic. I hope you have a great day. I look forward to seeing you Friday if you can drop by. I will get back. I've started the first chapter of what will hopefully one day become a book. And it's on one of the best things I've learned in my career in recent years. So I will do a show about that in the upcoming future, but I have to go through a couple of these awesome guests first. And until then, as I always sign off, have a great day and cheers.